Certainly.
So welcome everyone to the Monday, March 4th meeting of the Cannabis Licensing and Advisory Board. Kristen, if you would read the instructions for virtual meetings, please.
Certainly. I am stuck without a share button all of a sudden. Here, let me refresh my page. Here we go. Good afternoon. For public participation at the Beverage Licensing Authority and Cannabis Licensing Advisory meetings, the city has engaged with community members to co-create a vision for productive, meaningful, and inclusive civic conversations. This vision supports physical, emotional safety for community members, staff, and board and commission members, as well as democracy for people of all ages, identities, lived experiences, and political perspectives. More about this vision and the project's community engagement process can be found on the link on your screen. The following are examples of rules of decorum found in the Boulder Revised Code and other guidelines that support this vision. These will be upheld during the meeting. All remarks and testimony shall be limited to matters related to city business. No participant shall make threats or use other forms of intimidation against any person. Obscenity, racial epithets, and other speech and behavior that disrupts or otherwise impedes the ability to conduct the meeting are prohibited. Participants are required to sign up to speak using the name that they are commonly known by, and individuals must display their whole name before being allowed to speak online.
All right, thank you, Kristen. Could you do the member roll call, please?
Certainly. Member Christie did email us that he would be coming in late, so I will continue with Member Daniel.
Present.
Member Green.
Present.
Vice Chair Keegan.
Present.
Chair Kunzman, I believe, is by phone.
Present. And is my audio working?
Yes, Chair Kunzman, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Member Noble.
Present.
Ex officio Member Thompson.
Present.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
All right, thank you, Kristen. Next, we'll move on to approval of the board meeting minutes from the February 5th, 2024 meeting. Anyone have any comments, questions, clarifications from our February minutes? Those appear on page 12 of the packet. No comments, I'll entertain a motion to.
They look good. This is my first chance to move to approve, so.
All right, I hear a motion from Tom to approve the minutes from the February meeting. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second from Robin. Thank you, Robin. All opposed? All right. Those meetings minutes pass. All right. Kristen, could we start public comment now, please?
Certainly. This agenda item number 2 is general public comments for the board. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. We will be showing a 3-minute timer. If you are interested in providing public comments for the board, please use the raise your hand function. I'm seeing one so far. Vice Chair Keegan, I will promote Mr. Rodriguez to a panelist so he can speak.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Oh, he's a panelist now. He's over there.
All right, and then I will pull up the timer. One moment.
Do you guys want video on or not?
Yes, please.
Okay. Apparently the host has stopped my video from coming on.
No, let me. Let me try that again. You should have ability.
There we
Oh,
are.
hold it on.
Kate, ready if you are.
Your
Go
type
ahead, thank
starts
you.
now.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Nabil Rodriguez. I'm an attorney at Holland and Hart and appearing on behalf of my client, Fresh Baked. Excuse me. For those of you that don't know, they're a dispensary in the city of Boulder, located on the corner of Pearl Street and Folsom. I'm here to provide some additional context on the policy suggestion that we submitted, requesting that Boulder's regulations be amended to allow for drive-up windows. As a general matter, it occurs to me that Boulder's regulations may be falling behind the times as they were put in place when cannabis was still what we'll call cutting edge. Therefore, the regulations don't always line up with how business is conducted or the new license types that have been authorized by the state of Colorado. A couple of quick examples of this are one, the requirement for consultation room in medical dispensaries, which I understand to be a topic of discussion later today, and two, allowing for hospitality licenses to provide a legal place where cannabis may be consumed. One additional item, and the reason that I'm here today, is that Boulder's regulations appear to prohibit licensed businesses from establishing a drive-up window. We've submitted a policy suggestion along with red line changes to the code that would authorize such activities, and this is the second time that Fresh Baked has submitted such a policy suggestion. Several other jurisdictions expressly authorize drive-through cannabis businesses, including your neighbors to the south and where I'm currently located here in Denver. Frankly, since the pandemic, several aspects of our lives have changed to accommodate for, well, the changing consumer. The reason that most grocery stores allow for pickup orders was COVID. The reason that DoorDash has become such a huge success and pain to some of our wallets was COVID. And frankly, the reason that most folks can work from home and that all of us know how to use literally all of the video meeting applications was also COVID. Retail cannabis should be no different. And in fact, during the height of the pandemic, the state enacted emergency regulations allowing for drive-up services, which has since become official standing regulations. We just want to help facilitate updating Boulder's code to come back in line with the state regulations. From our perspective, allowing this change could help invigorate the struggling business sector, in addition to benefiting consumers who are either A, sick, like myself, and want to limit contact with other folks, or B, just don't have the time to park and walk into a retail location. Per our policy suggestion packet, we've demonstrated significant support from the community for cannabis businesses to have drive-up services and respectfully request that this advisory board take up the matter. Please let me know if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. We look forward to collaborating with this board on suggestions to update Boulder's cannabis regulations, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Do board members have any questions for Mr. Rodriguez?
It's hard for me to raise my hand.
Go ahead,
Can I
Tom.
ask a question?
Sure.
So, Mr. Rodriguez, thanks for testifying, or thanks for giving us public comment. So I agree with you. Things pivoted quite a bit during the pandemic and subsequently, and it's a new world than it was whatever, you choose the time frame, it doesn't really matter. X
Right.
number of years ago. And so have some places have shifted back, but are there good examples, as you pointed out, in other communities where drive up or drive through? I'm not sure the correct terminology, but where it continues. Can you give good examples of that?
I mean, Denver, frankly, allows for it. And when I was doing my research to try to kind of pull language from Denver's Muni code to try to incorporate into the Boulder code, they don't even like do it through any specific like ordinance. It's just one of the authorized powers or authorized activities, I should say, that the state has allowed for. And therefore, I mean, I know of at least a handful of retail businesses in Denver that allow for it. Native Roots, who I know has other policy suggestions coming up today, being one of those. And then I know that years ago, and it's escaping me, but there was a community, some mountain town community, and they did this, I don't know, back in maybe it was from the time of 2016 to 2018. Tumbleweeds, I think, was the company, but I can't remember the exact mountain town location that it was in, but I'm sure that if I were to Google it here, There are others that have expressly allowed it,
Maybe.
that haven't changed it, but if anyone knows that, I'm happy for you to chime in.
Seems like maybe it was in fair play, but I don't know.
That might be it. Yeah, I just found the YouTube video from 6 years ago. Colorado Hot Shop is the first drive-through of its kind, Tumbleweed Express drive-through. But to not open up the video and cause, disturbance in here into this meeting, we'll just leave it at that.
Tom, do you have any other questions before I move on to Robin? All right, Robin.
Well, I just wondered, are we having this discussion right now? Are we going to have a more in-depth conversation on the particular issue? Just because I know there's a lot of history in Boulder around drive-throughs for any product, and that the city generally tends to discourage that because we're trying to encourage less car-centric type of businesses. And I also know that drive-throughs tend to have to go through planning board. But I was wondering if there's going to be a more in-depth conversation about this later on. I don't have any particular questions, and I appreciate your comments, Mr. Rodriguez.
Yeah, I'll address Robin's question here first. So yeah, Robin, we have got some time scheduled because Fresh Baked did submit a policy suggestion form. So we will have a discussion around that policy suggestion form a little bit later in today's meeting. But if you have any questions for Mr. Rodriguez, you could ask those now. All right. Thank you, Robin. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez.
I guess one more, because Robin's question triggered a thought. As Robin points out, Boulder at least likes to portray itself as transportation alternative friendly options, including pedestrian scooters, bicycles, and maybe this question is pertaining more to Fresh Baked, and I live in that neighborhood, so I should know. But if they're friendly to car traffic, are they friendly to, would they be friendly to bicycle, pedestrian, scooter, whatever? I don't. Have you given thought to that, I guess?
That's a great question. And actually my wife works in Boulder. As you know, Holland Hart has an office in Boulder. We're pretty familiar with the fact that you guys have a pretty good bicycle culture is what I'll call it. I would say, and I can't obviously pretend to answer as to whether or not Fresh Baked has thought about this with respect to their current facility. But would they be open to allowing, I guess a ride up pickup services as well as drive up? To the extent that it's authorized and allowable by you all, or it's something that we can work on as a suggestion to move towards the city council. I mean, I'm happy to find a way to make that workable within any type of red line to the regulations that we put forth, but I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility. I will just quickly point out that I know that there is a drive-through prohibition in downtown districts, but we did confirm, at least with the licensing board, that Fresh Bake's current location does not fall within that district, and they would just have to meet the other itemized requirements under that drive-through specific provision of the Boulder Code. So hopefully that at least satisfies some additional questions.
Great, thank you. All right, thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Is there anyone else for public comment? Kristen, do you see anyone?
No, I do not.
Last call for public comment. Raise your hand. All right. Seeing none, Kristen, seeing none. Let's go ahead and close public comment. And move on to matters from the Cannabis Enforcement Officer, if Officer Gignac is here.
How are you? did another round of compliance checks and everybody passed. Plus I've been doing a lot, tripled my amount of drop-in inspections, and everybody, knock on wood, is playing by the rules. So that's nice to see.
Thank you, Officer Gignac. Any questions for Officer Gignac? All right. Thank you, Officer Gignac.
You're welcome.
All right, so I'll just editorialize a little bit here. So I just want to just help everyone calibrate. So next up, we're going to have a presentation from the City Attorney's Office with Christiana McCormack. We're estimating about 20 to 30 minutes for that. So we're going to have a chunk of time right here for 20 to 30 minutes for this presentation on needs and desires and neighborhood responsibility. Then we're going to move into a few sections here that are going to center on policy suggestion forms that have already been submitted, and we'll have substantive discussions about those, and there'll be a public comment for those as well. And then I just want to make sure that we're all just calibrated and preserving our time, attention, and energy, that we also do have some substantive matters at the back end of the meeting as well, particularly a memo template to providing feedback to council for the 2024. So I just want to make sure that we are just like calibrating our energy and attention across those kinds of three big asks coming up here. So if we could, let's go ahead and move into agenda item 4 here. So the presentation from the City Attorney's Office on needs and desires and neighborhood responsibility, please.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Great. So I'm Christiana McCormack. I'm with the City Attorney's Office, and I have been representing the Beverage Licensing Authority. And a little while back, I was asked to give a presentation and answer questions from CLAB regarding the neighborhood needs and desires requirement for liquor licensees. And hopefully you all had a chance to review the memo that I put together and everything. So what I'll do is give a short summary of what's in that memo, and I'll open it up for questions and we can go from there. Okay, so the needs and desires requirement. Well, let me start off with there is a requirement for a liquor license applicant to show that the neighborhood, and we'll talk about what a neighborhood is, that there is a need and desire in that neighborhood for that particular proposed establishment. And what an applicant needs to do is, after they submit their application, the Beverage Licensing Authority defines what the neighborhood is. And you can see from my memo that the neighborhood is defined. There's no specific, strict requirements for what the neighborhood is, but the Beverage Licensing Authority goes based off of what the neighborhood is for previous applicants in the same or similar locations. And they try to get decent size population of people who are likely going to be 21 and over, because those are the relevant people that we want to get information from for needs and desires. And that can be residents or business owners or business managers in the defined neighborhood. And so once the neighborhood is defined, then the applicant normally, in the great majority of circumstances, does a petitioning process to show that there is a need and desire. So they literally, either somebody associated with the applicant or a professional petitioning company goes around and knocks door to door and gets signatures from people. Again, anyone who is 21 and older, who is a resident or business manager or owner in the defined neighborhood. And oftentimes there aren't, at least for liquor licensing, there aren't a huge number of issues with petitioning, but the BLA will ask questions concerning, the percentage, whether there's a majority of people who signed in favor of the application. And they also make sure that any businesses, especially similar businesses in the neighborhood, were provided an opportunity for feedback. So that evidence and testimony is presented at the application hearing. And that's essentially the basics of needs and desires and how an applicant shows needs and desires for a liquor license application. And see, I think the only other main thing for this is that, for the information presented on needs and desires to be relevant, it has to be people who are, again, 21 and over and who are within that neighborhood. So with that, it was a very brief summary, but with that, I will open it up for questions and further discussion.
Thank you, Christiana. Do we have questions for the board, from the board for Christiana? Or her memo. Her memo starts, if you're in the reading packet, on page 18, I believe. Robin, you have a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, Christiana, for the super detailed memo. That was incredibly helpful for me and also for your presentation. And I guess I have two questions about the process. Is your sense that part of the reason the BLA has this process is to create an awareness among people within the neighborhood and create some awareness for them to be able to come forward and speak up at the hearing? I just wondered if it has that added benefit of creating more awareness. And then secondly, has the process ever resulted in a denial by the Beverage Licensing Authority of any applicant? Thank you.
Great questions. Thank you. So as to your first question, because this is a requirement under state law, I can only speak to what I think the intent behind the requirement under state law is. So you are absolutely correct that it has the added benefit of making sure that people in the neighborhood are aware of the application and that somebody is proposing to bring a liquor licensed establishment into the neighborhood. The other thing I'll note is that these hearings are, like any city meetings and hearings, also publicly noticed. And so there are those two aspects, right? So we have the public notice, and then also with the petitioning, going door to door, I think that it absolutely does help raise awareness that the applicant is planning to have an establishment there. And then as to your second question, I will actually defer to Kristen Changaris and Kristen Teague because I have no knowledge of any application being denied based on needs and desires. That said, my history with the Boulder Beverage Licensing Authority isn't super long, so I'm not sure if staff may have a better answer for you on that one.
Thank you, Christiana. I can answer that for you. A couple years back, there was a liquor application that resulted in a lot of negative neighborhood feedback, petitioning, needs and desires evidence, and the Beverage Licensing Authority did elect to deny issuing that application. That's the only one since I've been here there. So since, however, when I've been here, I'm in the middle of my 7th year.
Yeah, and so I'll just add to that it's certainly possible because it is a requirement to prove by the applicant that there is a need and desire. And so if there is evidence that the neighborhood does not have a need and desire and may have, in fact, the opposite, then that's certainly grounds for denial of an application.
Okay, thank you for that. I mean, I did pick up in your memo, beyond just the narrow definition of who, or the narrow determination of who can sign the petition, people who live in the neighborhood, 21 or older, and businesses and business managers that work there. But the other things was that it's a process that doesn't really, if there's a lot of just negative information, that's, I think the word was abhorrence of alcohol, those things are not taken into account. This seems like the process is really built to make the neighborhood aware and give them an opportunity to know and an opportunity to comment on how they feel about the business coming in based on their needs and desires. So for all those reasons, that I just appreciated your memo to make that clear to this board, that this isn't, an opportunity for people just to gripe. It's for specific needs and desires that they may hold as residents of the neighborhood. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you point out, general abhorrence to liquor in the case of liquor licenses, right, is it's not considered relevant because there has been a policy decision saying that these are allowed and they're allowed to be there. And so just not liking having liquor for sale in your neighborhood or served in your neighborhood isn't enough to push it over the kind of threshold to say there's not a need or desire. There has to be more information, just more information that's more relevant to like the application and its criteria and things like that. So yep.
You all set, Robin?
Thank you, Brian. Yeah.
All right, I got Tom next and then Kate after Tom. Go ahead, Tom.
Hi, Christiana. Thanks so much for getting on with us, and thank you for all the information you've provided. And Robin seems to be triggering questions in me. Good job, Robin. But it has to do with, I'm wondering if you can give an estimate when they do these neighborhood, what was it called, surveys or neighborhood, input from the neighborhood? How many, on the average, how many participants do they actually get information from? And the reason I'm asking, because it seems like in the mock application review that we did, I might be remembering wrong, but it like the mock neighborhood survey got something like input from 3 to 4 people, maybe 3 to 5 or something like that. And I guess my question ultimately is there a way to do this better? I mean, Robin's question is salient in the point that, it gets the attention of people, but sometimes after the fact, like, oh, I wish they had asked me. And I guess I'm wondering, can you think of a way that this whole process could be done better?
Sure. To your one point about the number of people, usually it's quite a few. Especially when there's a professional petitioning service that goes out and does it. There are oftentimes, over 100 signatures that are gathered and everything, either both for and against, or from people who are both for and against the establishment. Most of the time they're for it in liquor licensing instances. But I think that I'm not sure if there's a better way to do it. What I guess, getting the word out and everything is really important, and that's what the public notice process is for. Just everybody follows the public notice process and everything, and so that's always the main legal requirement, I guess, for having a hearing and making sure that the public is aware. And that's why we also have really common posting places. So the newspaper or the website or areas like that where people can easily or find the information they're looking for. And so I guess I don't have any ideas as far as making that process better and making sure that people are better aware of a hearing or an application that's coming before a board. But I can say that there are usually quite a few people who are included in the petitioning process when that does happen for liquor licenses.
Just seems like, like Mr. Rodriguez's point early on, or one of his points was the world has changed. And the world has changed in terms of people even having subscriptions to newspapers, much less reading them. And, the way the game right now is, social media, or I don't know, it's like near impossible to try to reach a population of people these days on a message. And so I'm just kind of brainstorming, and I was going to mention, I'm sorry, I'm on my way to go skiing in Aspen, and a couple things have held me up, like 10 inches of snow today and yesterday. So I'm still on the road, but I'm trying, and I pulled off to make a comment just to be on the safe side. But thanks so much for getting on with us.
Thank you, Tom. Kate, got you next.
Yeah, thank you again for coming on. Just as everyone else has said, I appreciate the memo and the information. And, I did have a question similar to Tom's about, like, is it the petition supposed to represent a certain percentage of the population or in that neighborhood? Or is there any, defined terms of that? Or is there, like, at least from a professional petitioner, if there is a representation of that they're trying to shoot for, is my first question. And I'll let you answer that. And then I have a second question.
Okay. Yeah, so there's nothing defined and no specific percentage or anything like that under the requirements for petitioning. It's kind of like a do the best you can to get the most people within the neighborhood sort of standard. So as long as they can show that they tried to get as many signatures as possible, then that's essentially meeting the requirements. So you'll often hear from liquor licensing petitioning companies, especially saying that the number of attempts they made versus how many signatures they actually got, so that they can show that, hey, we are trying to get every single signature that we possibly can here. So that type of evidence is common to hear in liquor licensing hearings.
Nice. Yeah, thank you. And then my second question is kind of onto that, right? Like, if a question like, what did you do to reach the most number of people during this process, could be something that somebody from a board could ask the applicant. And do you have any other, like, questions that you have seen the BLA ask the different applicants about this particular process of the needs and desires hearing that we can add to our repertoire of things to ask or look for when we're evaluating them?
Yeah, sure. So let's see. I think that as far as questions asked by the BLA, I mentioned one of the main ones before, which is they often ask more detailed questions about getting signatures and contacting or attempting to contact the businesses in the area, especially if it's an area where there are a higher number of liquor license establishments or similar types of businesses. So they'll often ask more detailed questions about that of the petitioning, the person who did the petitioning. And then as far as the residents, I think they ask questions about, or there's evidence or testimony offered about the time of week, the day of the week, the time of day, and things like that. So they're not trying to, like, go around at 1 a.m. in the morning or something like that, and bothering people while they're sleeping, or, but they show that, they try to hit times when people are more likely to be home, or during regular business hours and things like that, to show that they are doing their, again, best efforts to get as many signatures as possible. Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for your answers. Appreciate it.
And I'll just use my chair's prerogative to ask a question. In terms of different types of licenses, are there different kinds of considerations that we should make? So I'll recognize at the outset that we don't have social consumption for cannabis here in the city of Boulder, but using the beverage licensing board as a model, Are there differences in terms of either the processes around this or the kinds of objections or concerns that are raised by communities that should be given more or less weight for like a retail location versus a bar or tavern type of license?
I guess as far as petitioning and needs and desires go, there aren't a whole lot of distinctions between the different types of licenses. It's just establishing the neighborhood, and the type of license that is being sought is supposed to be made clear by the petitioner or the person doing the petitioning, so that anybody who is signing and giving their signature is aware of what they're signing and saying they approve or support or don't support. So I think that's really the extent of it as far as distinguishing between different types of licenses for liquor, at least.
Thank you. And then my last follow-up question would just be, to who is responsible for doing the due diligence for making sure that the signatures on a sheet or an application actually constitute the neighborhood? Is that fall to staff or the city's clerk or this board? It's like, we get a sheet of signatures. How do we like make sure that that's actually a neighborhood?
So that's a great question, and one that, as far as like checking the validity of the signatures and everything, that's a pretty big it's a big ask, right? So I think that there is a presumption, and I will let Kristen Teague or Kristen Changaris correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that there's an assumption that the signatures are valid. And that question can be asked so that it's part of, the testimony provided at a hearing as well when someone is under oath. But we don't get into, at least as far as the hearings go and the pieces that I'm involved with, we don't get too far into trying to figure out if every single signature is valid on the petitions.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Are there any other questions for Christiana? Those gears turning. All right. I think we'll close out this matter. Thank you, Christiana, so much for coming and joining us today and preparing this memo and sharing all your research and background in this space with us.
My pleasure. Thank you all.
Thank you. So we are going to move on to the next agenda item here, public comments for policy suggestion forms. So again, we're going to open this back up to public comment mode. So again, we're going to have a 3-minute timer on screen that Kristen Teague is going to manage. And again, this is only for public comments topical to Kristen Teague. Correct me if I'm wrong. Are we going to open them up simultaneously or sequentially? All right, you're on mute, Kristen.
Yes, sorry about that. I will be opening each session individually and then closing it, so it's a clear record.
All right, so we're going to open up our first public comment suggestion for the policy suggestion form from Native Roots regarding medical wellness centers. And this was a policy suggestion form from, I believe, June 2023. So I guess we will open our public comment for this first policy suggestion form.
Certainly. If you are here for public comment on agenda item 5.1, policy suggestion form from Native Roots referencing medical wellness centers from June of 2023, please use the raise your hand function. Again, this is public comment session for the suggestion form for medical wellness centers and their consult rooms. Last call. Vice Chair Keegan, I'm seeing no public comments.
Okay.
So I will close that session.
Thank you, Kristen. We'll move into our second element here. This is the policy suggestion forms from Native Roots regarding video retention timelines. This was a policy suggestion form that was submitted in November 2023, and it appears as agenda item 6, I believe. Oh, sorry. Starts on page 31 of the meeting packet. we'll open this public comment now for this one if Kristen wants to.
Certainly,
Good.
opening the public comment session for agenda item 5.2, policy suggestion form from Native Roots regarding video retention timeline, initially submitted November 2023. If you're here to make public comment on this suggestion form, please raise your hand using the raise your hand feature in the Zoom. Again, this is public comment session for policy suggestion form regarding video retention timeline. Last call. Vice Chair Keegan, we have no public comment.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. So we'll close public comment for these two policy suggestion forms now. Question to staff, is this an appropriate time for the board to discuss either of these policy matters, or should that be tabled till a later part of this meeting? I guess I would just take the temperature of the board. Is there any interest in discussing either of these policy suggestion forms? Anyway.
Have we heard anything more from Michael on when he might be able to join?
I have not.
No.
And Kristen is not. I've got a hand from Kate. Kate, go ahead.
Just a question about, I know that last time we had talked about the recordings piece and that we wanted to get Officer Gignac's perspective on the 30-day thing. So I don't know if now, sorry, if now is the time to discuss that, to see if she has any feedback or thoughts on that, or what the next part of this process was. So I'm sorry if I missed or I
No,
jumped
thank you for
the gun,
that
so,
reminder,
yeah.
Kate. And I think we'll grab Officer Gignac while we've got her. So I guess to editorialize Kate or on Kate's behalf, and correct me if I get this wrong. So Officer Gignac, like, is there any sort of concerns that you have as a public safety officer and sort of responsible for doing these enforcement actions for changing this video retention policy, or any considerations that we should keep in mind?
Yeah, I've discussed it with our in-house legal advisor, and I've even been talking to State Med about it. And really, our policy is only 15 additional days than theirs right now. So it just means that if we have something come up, we need to really start our investigation quicker so that we can make sure we have video access. So it's kind of 50-50. Is the extra 15 days, could it come into play in an investigation? Yes, but is it also a little bit easier for everybody involved just to mirror the state procedures in this case? I can see it both ways, so I don't have a huge objection.
And just to clarify, it's currently 40 days for the city of Boulder, correct?
40.
And it's
40.
30. I think it's just 30 for the state, so I
Yeah.
think it's only 10 days.
10 days, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I know that we had talked about it last time. I wanted to make sure that we got your perspective on it as well.
I would just ask a follow-up question for Officer Gignac as well. Is there, can you recall any instances where you've required video evidence that was more than 30 days old in the last year or 2 years?
Yeah, but it wasn't related to a violation taking place at the facility. It was an unrelated crime that happened in the alley. And
Okay.
so we needed their cameras to help support or negate that investigation.
Ryan, can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Robin. Yeah.
So, officer, I just want to make sure that I'm hearing you. I'm sorry to put you on the spot a little bit, but are you comfortable with this change?
Well, I'm comfortable in the fact that we haven't had it impact us in a negative way. Now, it's not to say that if, this change is approved and then something happens and we don't find out about the crime until, day 35. But you have to set some limit. I mean, we can't say you have to keep the videos, for a year. So you just kind of have to play with what rules are in front of you.
But generally speaking, in your day to day, the 30 days feels like it's been sufficient. Generally speaking, it would be sort of outside an exceptional situation to need more than the 30 days.
Correct.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So I guess when I take the temperature of the board, is there a consensus, or is it worth? I'd be open to entertaining a motion to direct staff to undertake red lines or propose red lines to the Boulder revised code that would reflect the changes in either of these policy suggestion forms.
Good with that.
Tom, I heard you say something, but I didn't hear everything you said.
Oh, I'm good with that.
So is that a motion or a first?
I'm not sure I feel prepared to make a motion while still driving. I'm moving, but not making a motion. How about that?
All right. Does someone want to back Tom up or provide another perspective here? Just recognizing again that we've been sitting on both of these policy suggestion forms for 10 months and 4 months.
How about if I take over as the chair for a moment and you can make a concise motion?
I'm gonna get Ethan here first.
Okay.
Ethan, go ahead.
I will motion to amend the Boulder Revised Code to align with the state rules.
So this is for this the video retention matter.
Yes.
All right. So just would you entertain a friendly amendment? Ethan, would you entertain a friendly amendment? Yes. Okay.
I would, yes.
So can we direct staff to propose red lines to the Boulder Revised Code that would capture reducing the 40-day retention rule to 30 days, matching state policy? Staff, is there any other clarification that you might need or ambiguity? Go ahead, Kristen.
Hi, Kristen Chingaris, licensing manager. I think this might be a good time to call your attention to agenda item number 7, which is the proposed process for policy suggestion forms. I know we haven't gotten to this step in the meeting yet, but this might be a good opportunity to look at that process and see if that's something you're comfortable with, and maybe these are good suggestions to start this process with.
Okay. I like Kristen's idea, so we will revisit this. So, Ethan, I'm going to table your motion, but I'll entertain it again a little bit later when we have a chance for get through this policy suggestion form process. So I apologize to staff for stutter stepping there, but we're going to have a discussion about how to do these policy suggestion forms here just in a bit. So
That sounds good.
I apologize for being premature.
That'll give me time to polish it up too.
Okay, thank you, Ethan. All right, so let's close agenda item 5 for public comments. Move now onto agenda item 6, policy suggestion forms received for March. So in the meeting packet, we did receive a policy suggestion form from Fresh Baked. This starts on page 35 of the packet, the reading packet. Are there any questions, feedback, discussion? And again, this is on the matter that Mr. Rodriguez just spoke about in public comment as well. So Robin, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I just want to echo what I had said earlier about Boulder, generally speaking, around drive-throughs of any product. I wouldn't favor it for marijuana for a number of reasons, but I think there have been a couple of restaurants that have been denied drive-throughs in Boulder, and the process was through the planning board. This one was on 28th Street as well. It's where Alibaba's used to be on 28th. They were going to put some chicken place there or something like that, and they wanted a drive-through. And it went through planning board, and planning board said no. One of the chief advocates, or I guess opposition groups, was Community Cycles. And their work on this issue was really just around encouraging anything car-centric business-wise. So they just really feel that drive-throughs are not appropriate for us at this time. And so I just wanted to give you guys that background information if you didn't already have it. Yeah, I'm not hot on drive-throughs for anything really, but definitely not for that particular dispensary. I drive by it all the time, and it's a really busy corner as it is. And yeah, so that's my input. Thanks.
Thank you, Robin. Appreciate that context. Are there any other board members with questions or discussions related to this policy suggestion form from Fresh Baked? So again, I will note that they added some red lines to proposed red lines to the Boulder Revised Code that would permit this, as well as a collection of a petition, signed petition with, can't do all these counts of 10, but it looks like something on the order of 100 signatures, maybe more. So I just want to acknowledge Fresh Baked's efforts to both collect these signatures, undertake the good faith red lines here, and submit this policy suggestion form. All right, again, without prejudicing any decisions on this policy suggestion form, I think we're going to close agenda item 6 here and move into agenda item 7. We're going to talk about policy suggestion form processes more generally. Let's move on to agenda item 7 here, matters from the city attorney. We've got 2 matters here for both a process for policy suggestion forms.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Chris and Teague, would it be possible to pull up the policy suggestion form process and so that we can walk through it?
I believe that starts on page 86, the meeting packet.
And if not, everybody can probably just follow along except for Tom, who's driving. And you're on mute, Kristen.
I'll try to follow auditorial.
Okay, very well. All right, so we can take, as an example, we can take the one that came in from Fresh Baked. So the way that the process that we're suggesting, the process works is the policy suggestion form gets filled out, and we're going to have the other form so that you can look at, but it gets filled out and then it goes kind of back and forth between licensing and the company that's making the suggestion. Once it is in the form that it should be, then it goes to you for the first time, just like it did today. And so today is the day that you decide under number 2 here. Today is the day that you decide whether you want to consider it further. And if you want to consider it further, then licensing and the city attorney's office will do an analysis for you. In the process of doing that, again, if you decide to go further, then you would set it for a public hearing for the next month. So that'll at least give individuals an opportunity and businesses an opportunity to be heard at the next CLAB meeting to either support the suggestion or to speak against it. And then can we go down to number 3? So if you decide, yeah, you know what, we do want to at least consider it. We do want to put this for public comment. and we do want to consider this for the next meeting, then licensing in the city attorney's office provides you a written memo that's going to talk about kind of the historical reasons that we've had this, whether the change suggested would be permissible under, for example, state regulations, federal regulations, and we'll take into consider our ordinance. And so all of that would be included in that summary. It gets sent to you, and licensing provides notice to the public that at the next meeting, it'll be heard. And then if we move to 4, all right, so then you get to kind of the second one. So again, using the fresh baked as the example, let's say that you do decide, yeah, you know what, we want to dig into this a little bit more. We want to, see what other things are being considered in other jurisdictions, or we want to see how it would impact you in Boulder. At the second one is when you would actually take comment on these proposed changes. Once you take that comment in, then you actually deliberate on whether or not to add the suggestion or the proposed change to an information packet that would go to City Council. If you decide, you know what, we've considered what licensing has to say, we've considered what the City Attorney's Office has had to say, we've considered all the comments from the public, we've decided we are not in favor of this suggestion or change, then it stops right there. And but again, if you decide, yeah, you know what, this is a suggestion that we're going to send to City Council, then the information packet gets prepared. The City Attorney's Office and licensing will prepare that so that it can be sent to City Council as a proposal to make an amendment to the ordinance at issue. Then now we're at our third CLAB meeting. We're number 6 on your screen here. All of that suggestion that we would be proposing to send to City Council, you're going to review it and you're going to say, yes, this looks good. Please send it to City Council. Or, you know what, we have some suggestions. Can you please make these suggestions before it goes to City Council? Once you approve of what you want to go to City Council, then in number 7, we put it together, send it to City Council for their next meeting. And Kristen Teague, do you want to now
Can we
do
just go on? Sure.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the new licensing, the Cannabis Licensing Advisory Board Policy Suggestion Form. So what it looks like is the information that at the beginning is going to be filled out by the applicant, making the suggestions. This is all the what, the why, the when. And then what you're going to see next is the portion for licensing in the City Attorney's Office. So this is all the information that the applicant would have to fill out. And then licensing goes in, starts working on it, and then using this based on what we just saw will provide information about how the process is going to work, when the next CLAB meeting is going to occur, whether or not licensing in the City Attorney's Office gets direction from you to go forward on it. And it just has all the information there in this one document. This also is where you would get, just like I talked about, if and when you decide, yes, for this suggestion, we want you to do a little bit more digging, give us the history of it, give us how this might impact the city, whether it would impact other parts of city government. This is all the information you're going to be receiving. And then again, this is just going to walk you, this is just the written portion of what we talked about in the process. Does anyone have either any questions and we can go ahead and take this down, Kristen. Thanks. I do see a question.
Yeah, thank you so much. Let's go ahead with Kate, and then we got Robin after Kate.
Yeah, thank you for putting this together. I think it's great. I think the process makes a lot of sense. It breaks it down into something that, we're obviously taking a look at it, and it gives multiple chances for us to ask questions and to get different information at each stage. I don't have any questions. I think it's great. I really like the flow of it. I like the new form. I love just having a process documented, which feels really good, so that the city, community members can see what to expect from the process. So just thanks for the team for putting it together.
Thank you, Kate. Go ahead, Robin.
I want to echo Kate's comments there. I feel almost a sense of relief to see this process document, and I really appreciate the work and thoughtfulness here. My only question in looking at this would be, is it possible that the analysis that's listed in number 3 on your document, is it possible that that could be done prior to the suggestion form ever coming to CLAB, if it was done briefly? The reason I ask is that this, as it stands, it's much better than what we have right now, but it is a 3-month process for a petitioner. And I want to be somewhat sensitive to getting people information. And I have a feeling that when somebody has sent us a suggestion form so far, all of these suggestion forms that we've gotten have been thought out and reasonable and worthy of consideration. I would say we haven't really gotten one that wasn't worthy of some consideration of this board. And I just wondered if the staff was able to help us skip that step. Would defer to you, of course, Mr. Ramirez, but I wondered if that might be a possibility.
So, and thank you for that. That's certainly reasonable. The reason that we put it in this way is because we have a finite number of resources, both in staff and in time. And so pulling those resources from licensing, from the city attorney's office, before you give us direction on any single one that comes in, and you have to remember, licensing covers all of licensing, whether it's alcohol, whether it's some of the vaping, whether it's all the miscellaneous licensing, in addition to this. So there's one very small staff, and that's why before getting into that, we did want direction from CLAB.
Okay, thank you.
And I appreciate Member Noble's concern here that, like, trying to be expedient about being responsive to these. I'm certainly mindful of the fact that we have several public comment forms here that are aging, and I would like to see them cleared or moved in some kind of way so that we can be responsive to public petitions. Are there, again, just treating, again, I also thank the staff. I think that, just echoing both Kate and Robin's comments, that I think that I am very grateful to have a clearly enumerated process. Staying at the level of just like process at this kind of meta level. Are there any other kinds of questions, feedback, concerns about what's been proposed here? Would staff like some kind of formal indication that we are all excited about this as well before we move forward with implementing this as a board? Or is there any other clarification that we need to formalize this? Should we just proceed with an understanding that this will be the process we use for public or the policy suggestion forms going forward? Are there any objections to following this process for the policy suggestion form? Hearing none, I'm going to move forward with us with this process now. Staff, before we engaged with the substance of any of the previous policy forms, was there something else that you wanted to discuss or address or bring before the board, or are we ready to run this process for some of these policy suggestion forms?
Yeah, now that you are in agreement to follow that process, now you can go back, have the ones in front of you, and you can give us direction. Yep, we as a board decide no on the drive-through, no, it's not going to go any further. Or you can decide, yeah, you know what, we want further information, let us know, and we can just walk through that process.
All right. Who's ready to take this process for a test drive? So again, being mindful, I'm going to proceed in the order of both the having we're at step 2, first collab meeting. More than that for all of these now. We've intaked all 3 of these policy suggestion forms, medical wellness centers from Native Roots, video retention timeline, also from Native Roots, and cannabis drive-through from Fresh Baked. I'm going to just proceed in temporal order here. So on the first policy suggestion form from Native Roots for medical wellness centers from June 2023, we've received this policy suggestion form. We've had a public comment on this. Is there, trying to make sure I get this language correct. Does the CLAB want to request that the licensing and city attorney's office develop an analysis on these matters? And if staff has already provided this opinion and we've lost it in the sands of time, please correct me. So hearing that we haven't already done this step, reassuring, does the board want to consider this first policy suggestion form and direct staff to perform an analysis and research and bring that to the next CLAB meeting for a policy suggestion form regarding medical wellness centers? Ethan, I see your hand.
I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page here. So let me pull it up on the agenda here. With the policy suggestion form submitted by Native Roots in June, are we now having this new process outlined, saying that we are now at step 3 or step 5?
I think we're at step 2, whether or not we want to direct licensing and city's attorney's office to develop a research and analysis memo.
Okay. I would argue that we have received that from the attorney's office. And I believe that's noted on the policy suggestion form with the date of August 7th. In the notes, it says city attorney's office to provide review August 7th.
All right, so you're looking at page 30 in the meeting packet. This is a section staff use only for this policy suggestion form received on June 5th, that there's a notation here for the discussion at an August 2023 meeting with CAO comments and review. Thank you, Ethan, for that clarification. So we might have already received this reviewing analysis. I guess we would need to go check our August meeting minutes.
I can do that for you real fast while you're doing that.
Thank you, Kristen. So again, just for folks following along at home, we're just trying to make sure we're at the appropriate step that we've just, are we at step 2 or step 5?
The other thing I would note is that we had a presentation from Med about the difference between the state changes and our current language. And then we also heard from Officer Gignac, who might constitute the staff response around this particular change.
Thank you, Robin.
So obviously this was before my time, but at least in the information that I'm receiving, it appears that as a group, you have gotten information, not in writing from the city attorney's office, but you discussed it while you were on the record and got advice. But I don't think a vote was ever taken to act on it one way or the other.
I do have the minutes. I can display them on my screen, that section, if you would prefer.
Yes, please.
As noted, it begins here.
So the minutes say that there is a discussion regarding the June meeting policy suggestion form, striking requirements for medical and dual license stores to maintain a private consultation room. Attorney Frohart and paralegal Real Ward provided their staff research on this matter and referenced the zoning. Member questions. So thank you to Ethan. It seems to me that we did have this discussion and an analysis was provided. Again, that predates the process that we just agreed upon. But if we were to kind of follow through on this process, I believe that we are at something like step 5. So thank you, Kristen, for that background. Are there any disagreements with my interpretation there? I saw a hand. Was it from Robin or Kate?
It was from me, Kate. Just I wanted to mention that we had talked about it last month, about this topic, and I think that there was some just discussion around how to move forward with this because of the fact that it was intertwined with the personal use qualification of the land use code in Title IX, and so there was some confusion on whether or not it could be separated from that or not. So I think that there was, at least my notes have it as we kind of weren't really sure how we could untangle it or what we needed to do. So I think that there was some consensus that it would make sense to potentially not have bud tenders or people giving kind of different advice or even be construed as giving any kind of consultation advice to patients. And so if that were the case, we were kind of down this road of how can we do that? So I think that we are, this one, I don't personally think that it fits snugly in our, the new process. I think there is some potential analysis / drafting of language that I don't know if they can draft the language because I think it actually is intertwined with Title IX. And so if that's the case, then it might require an analysis before we can go to the drafting of the ordinance. So I think it is kind of somewhere in between, just because I don't know from the city's perspective if we think that we even can draft it. I guess that's a city question about would you all draft a potential language change to just the cannabis regulations, and then that would be presented to city council with a caveat that it would also has to be discussed at a building and planning level. Just that's kind of where it just feels a little bit kind of in between and intertangled a little bit.
Thank you, Kate. That's a really excellent summary. Kind of captures my understanding as well. So I guess just summarizing Kate's question to staff, like at this stage, just following our process, if we wanted to, recognizing that this kind of falls between the jurisdiction of different boards here, could we direct staff to include this in a memorandum packet to council? Or do we need to sort of look at red lines first? Or do we need to have some ping pong back and forth between the planning board and our board? Or is there research that needs to happen before we even do that? Looking at red lines.
One of the things that we did not discuss is, and so this is a very good example. So you've received some information, but you still have follow-up and you want to give us further direction. We can certainly do that. It'll take us back. And then we would have to provide additional public comment. So today, the way it was set up in the agenda under number 5 was to already take the public comments for those policy suggestions. So if you are not ready to vote one way or the other, if you want to send us back with additional research to do for you, we can certainly do that. Just know it would take another month to provide additional notice and public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. Kate, I see your hand.
Yeah, I was just going to ask whether, we could take a vote to say that, yes, we want to move forward with this. But how that gets untangled is on the city staff side, because if the board agrees that we want to move forward with it, then it is then city staff's kind of, prerogative to figure out how to do that or how to draft that for council. So if that's the case, I think that makes more sense than to paying it back to have to come back, because I think that we gave public comment and we've been doing this August and then last month and now this month. I think that in the interest of moving things along, that would be my hope or my suggestion.
I really like Kate's idea. Ethan, I see your hand.
I also do want to just call your attention to the desires that are expressed in the suggestion form to remove the requirement for a consultation room doesn't necessarily encapsulate their suggested policy or suggestion to strike the rules. 614.7 H2, that covers a lot more than just the consultation room. So that's caregiver services, including health treatments, therapy, physical therapy, massage, acupuncture. Like the rules that they're suggesting be stricken don't exactly align with just the desire to remove consultation rooms. So that, like everyone's saying, there's a lot there that's going to need to be separated. And that suggestion form, I think, is kind of asking for two different things. One of them, I think, is a little bit more actionable than the other, specifically the consultation rooms, which, like we have said in previous discussions, would align more with the state's rules.
Ethan, since you sounds like you maybe have this code up in front of you, can you just for the record state or identify what part of the code references consultation rooms at all? What section does?
From the state or the BRC?
From the BRC.
That would be Title 6, Chapter 14, Section 7, Subsection 8, Parts 2 and 3. In addition to Title 6, Chapter 16, Section 7, Subsection G, Part 3.
Everyone got that?
Excuse me, Member Daniel, did you say Section 8 or Section H?
H as in hotel.
H, thank you.
Now that I'm done making Ethan play, or Member Daniel play as a lawyer, I'm going to make Member Green role play as a lawyer here. Like, as a medical practitioner, like in this kind of space, what perspectives, concerns you have about these changes, or as they impact your colleagues, your practices, your patients?
As far as we're specific to drive through?
No, this is just only for those medical wellness centers, sort of.
With the room, you mean?
Yeah, the special room, yeah.
I mean, anything that's gonna promote the facility having a more medical feel, I think would be favorable as far as more privacy. I think that there's a bigger conversation that I would want to have as far as medical versus recreational facilities anyway, so that wouldn't be appropriate now, but I feel like that would come into play more in my personal feelings on this.
Thank you. So just herding cats here. Do we want to direct? I'm just trying to get us back to for in our process form here, we're in our, let's call this our second collab meeting, since we've had a public comment cycle here. Do we want to direct staff to come back with a memo that kind of identifies specific changes here that are appropriately scoped to what Member Daniel sort of identified within our lane of the Boulder Revised Code? Go ahead, Member Daniel.
Yeah, my suggestion is to solely focus on eliminating the requirement for private consultation rooms and consultation services.
I don't know that we need a formal vote for this, but is anyone opposed to Member Daniel's suggestion that we direct staff to come back with red lines and a research and analysis on removing the requirement for consultation rooms
And consultation services.
and consultation services? He's Member Green making faces, so I want to translate those faces into words.
I guess I'm trying to understand process-wise, we're just asking for more information if we do that. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
All right.
But sorry, Mr. Ramirez is saying no.
No, at this point, what I heard the motion to be, or the proposal to be, is for us to start the process, to get you what it would look like to send to city council to make that change. And then we come back to you with the proposed language, and you say, nope, we do not want this to go to city council, or you say, yeah, we want it to go to city council, but we want to change some of the wording. So that would be our next step, to prepare that document that would ultimately go from you to city council.
All right. Does staff need any more clarifications on our direction or intent here? Please look into it for us and come back to us, I guess. Is anyone opposed to that intent?
Do we need to vote? Like make a motion and vote? Is that, or is that kind of where we are? We're already there because nobody
I always
opposed?
worry about us making motions, but
Well, I didn't know if we could just move forward with it like that or whether we needed a vote.
Yeah, so this is not taking action on a form, something formal that's in front of you. So this is just you giving us direction. So as long as there's no objection, as I understand it, we would be preparing a document for your review that would ultimately go to city council, solely focused on the elimination of the room and service, or the removal of the room and services.
I'm comfortable with that. Are there any objections to that direction for staff? Going once, going twice. It's old. All right, thank you, staff. All right. Let's flex these muscles a second time. All right, so we're gonna apply the process to the second policy suggestion form here from Native Roots for the video retention timeline. This is a policy suggestion form from November 2023. So I guess we should check in where we are in the process, if we're going to follow this process. So one, has there been any analysis that staff or the city, that the licensing or city attorney's office has provided on this one yet? Robin, I see your hand.
Thank you, Brian. This was the one I was referring to in my just recent comment, that I do feel like we've gone through that process. That's where I'm at, between the med presentation on alignment and Officer Gignanc's comments. Thank you.
Thank you. So here, again, we've had a public comment cycle. So we're currently at step 4, the second collab meeting, where we've received some analysis in previous meetings. We've taken public comment on what was proposed in the policy suggestion form. And I guess we're at potentially a similar step now where we might direct staff to come back with an analysis and and proposed red lines that take into account changing the video retention timeline from 40 days to 30 days. Is there any other additional or different direction we want to give to staff on this second policy suggestion form matter? Staff, is there any clarification that we can provide for you at this stage?
Nothing from the city attorney's office.
Are there any objections to directing the city attorney's office and licensing staff to come back with a packet of information that would be passed on to council that would include an analysis and potential red lines? I'm seeing no objections. Staff, do you need any other clarifications on the second matter? Okay, look at us, just cooking with gas. So now, so those were policy suggestion forms we'd received a while back. And so now we'll move on to our third policy suggestion form that we just received for this meeting. So we had that intake. We're currently at the first CLAB meeting step here. And so we are again would request that like licensing in the city attorney's office like offer some analysis and direct licensing to include this as a matter for public hearing at the April CLAB meeting. So is there any objection to directing staff to undertake research and analysis around the third policy suggestion form from Fresh Baked allowing cannabis drive-through?
I guess I'll speak up, Brian, if that's okay.
Please go ahead.
Hearing Mr. Ramirez talk about the licensing staff, their workload, the things they have to do, and thinking about the context of drive-throughs in Boulder, the fact that they generally have gone through the planning board, and also that there are groups that are advocating to not have drive-throughs, to be less car-centric, I would suggest that we don't ask the staff to move forward. If the rest of the board wants to pursue this, I'm not making a big stink, but I think this, for me, this is the place to stop. I don't think we're necessarily the right board. And I recognize what Mr. Ramirez said about workloads. So for those reasons, I hope that we can stop this process right here. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Appreciate that note of dissent. Are there other folks who would want to make a case for proceeding through the process for this? Kate, I see your hand.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I hear, Robin and understand in terms of the workload for the staff. I also think that it needs to match what the community or the people that are asking for it are asking for, to at least do an analysis and understand what the city's perspective is on it, what the historical aspects of it are, and potentially what the operational impacts would be. They did not just give us language in a policy suggestion form, they did give us petitioning. So there is some needs and desires at least noted in this packet. So I would say that I think it's worth the consideration and the conversation that would ensue based on the information that the staff would provide.
Okay. Member Kunzman, Daniel, Green. Proceed, not to proceed, directing staff. Member Daniel.
I do want to acknowledge the amount of signatures that they did receive in their petition, and I do think that it deserves, at least public comment to hear what the rest of the community has to say about this matter.
Member Daniel. Member Green.
I'm inclined to agree with Ethan in that way. I mean, I agree with Robin that maybe this, should kind of end here. Doesn't really look like something we necessarily want to take on, or maybe pragmatically can, from what I understand. But at the same time, it is something that constituents clearly want to have happen. So I mean, I hate to add work, but at the same time, it feels important to hear like more information about it. Because if I understood Mr. Ramirez, that would be the next step. We're not agreeing to anything. We would just be gathering information, which might answer more of Robin's questions about like, well, is this more of like a planning thing? You know, like where does this really fall? How does our role actually come into that? So I'd be inclined to, or in favor of the next step. And I'm still trying to get clear on what that actually is. So
Thank you, Member Green. We'll put Member Kunzman on the hot spot. Yeah.
I think the commenters have gotten more nebulous and undefined as they have gone further. But besides that, I'm, by the way, I can't, the meeting link is closed, so I actually can't get in on my laptop. So I have my laptop open to the meeting packet and I'm just using the phone. Tell me exactly, I mean, Stacy was a little nebulous there.
So we're
What's
just,
the question?
the question is, do we want to even consider this as a matter and like ask staff to spend resources and time and expertise, like exploring and doing research on this? Where this is the allowing drive-through. So do we even want to direct staff to like perform research and analysis on whether drive-throughs something that's feasible and that we would then follow up with more discussion, or do we want to just stop all discussion of this matter right now?
Well, I guess I would go back to if the staff seems game, which they, as best I can tell, they do, then it's not like we're deciding to do it. And I guess I would like a full analysis of repercussions and, you know, what are the consequences of doing such thing if that's possible to elucidate. And so I guess I'd have to kind of agree with Ethan and more recently Stacy that it's okay to investigate this further.
Okay. And I will agree with Stacy and Kate and Ethan that I think that both the combination of the signature gathering indicates that there is a constituency that would like this matter to be discussed more. I think there was a good faith effort for bringing this matter before the board, presenting red lines. And so I would also be in favor of directing staff to present an analysis of this policy suggestion form for consideration of future meeting. I'm cognizant that we've now stacked 3 separate policy suggestion form analyses like on staff. And so I guess the question to staff is do you have any suggestions or feedback about how best to stagger these or prioritize these?
We take direction from you, what you feel is the most appropriate, whether it's of biggest impact or whether it's first in time. I know that the first 2 that you discussed are relatively old. So, you know, we take direction from you.
Go ahead, Kate.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that it would make a lot of sense to move the first 2 forward and have staff draft that language and get those prepped and then move the following to the May meeting. It's going to be a little bit
Is
more
there
work too.
any objection to directing staff to move the policy suggestion forms 5.1 and 5.2 for the April meeting, and then the policy suggestion form from Fresh Baked to the May meeting? So do the first 2 next month, and then the most recent one in May, 2 months from now. Any objection to that?
Brian, sorry, quick question. I'm not objecting, but I just want to be clear that the one on the drive-throughs, that's at an earlier point in the process, right? We're asking the staff to do less on that. That's not red lines. That's like number 2 on the, yeah?
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't want to speak for staff, but I actually think that you know some of that, at least the recording one, is going to be pretty straightforward. But I think that the drive-through might be more research than and getting that together in terms of analysis. But I don't want to But that would be my guess. So I think putting those together, the recording plus one other one, and then.
Sure. So yeah, so like understanding Robin's question that, yeah, I think we want to sort of move these first two through, have those be considered at the April meeting. And if this third matter with the drive-through does require more time or research, giving staff that runway so that we could consider that ideally at the May meeting. Or any objections to that as direction to staff? Seeing none, staff, do you need any other clarification?
No, or at least not from the city attorney's office. We are the 4th of March. Our deadline would be the 27th. So that gives us the rest of this week and about 2 weeks to knock that out for both of them and get that to you.
All right, thank you so much. Are there other matters from the city attorney's office beyond policy suggestion land?
No other matters.
Thank you. So closing agenda item 7, moving on to agenda item 8, matters from the regulatory licensing office. Kristen.
Certainly. Kristen C., did you want to kick it off with any kind of updates for board recruitment?
Sure, thanks, Kristen. So board recruitment has closed. We did have a couple of applicants for the open seats on CLAB. Council will be making their final decision and appointing to those positions on March 14th at the council meeting. So we should have an update for you all at the April meeting. I think member Daniel has some news that he's going to share with you all in the next part of the agenda, but we were able to recruit for all the open seats on the board. And next on the agenda, we do have the memo template for the feedback to City Council. Kate, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just curious about in times past, we would see the applications for the applicants, or is that something that we can find online, or if I know that in the past they've been in packets or otherwise for, and by next meeting, right, we would know who they would be. So maybe including just the ones that made the cut to the board, just so we have a little background.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I believe these the applications are available online, and we can find that link and share it with the board so that you have that information prior to the council meeting on the 14th. We can just send that via email. Does that work?
Yeah, totally. Thanks.
Any other questions about board recruitment before we move on?
Yeah, please keep moving.
Great. So next on the agenda is the memo to council. So as we mentioned at the last meeting, council is providing an opportunity for all boards and commissions to provide feedback. And it sounds like CLAB is interested in doing so. It's optional, but at the last meeting, we talked about moving forward with that. So staff has put together just a very basic template for the memo, just as a starting point to start the conversation. So we just wanted to open that up to the board to look at that draft memo, talk about those items, and finalize that because it is due to council by March 22nd. So we'll need to finalize that feedback at the meeting tonight.
And for everyone's reference, that template is on page 91 of your packet.
Right, so on page 91, top community issues or opportunities on a CLABS bind, and we can have some bullet points underneath that, and then top items on CLABS work plan. So just a point of order, I guess, at this point, it's 4:45. This next sort of matter here might just, we're close to the end. Do folks want to push through, or do folks want to move into a break before we kind of move into a new substantive discussion? So just taking a poll. Do folks want to take a break right now before we get into like this future work plan, or do folks just want to push through since we're making good progress in time?
Is Michael here by chance? Is he?
Not yet. I am monitoring the attendee waiting room. And I have not yet seen him come through.
Okay.
Well, when I asked earlier, I texted him and his case was like 22nd on a list, on a docket list, so he probably won't be here. Especially if we push through.
I don't know, Brian, maybe we could just take a 5 or 10 minute break.
Anyone opposed to coming back at 4:54?
Sounds great. You're doing a great job, Brian.
Thank you, Tom. All right, let's take a break and we'll reconvene at 4:54. Thank you, Kristen. All right, so picking up where we left off, we're on agenda item 8. So we're currently looking at proposing a template and feedback to council for, and this is on page 91 of the reading packet. So thank you to staff for starting to outline this memo, but the kinds of 2 issues they've started to frame out for us, like what are the top community issues or opportunities on CLAB's mind? And then what are the top items on CLAB's work plan? So I'll just use this as an opportunity to open this up to this first collection, like what are the top community issues or opportunities on CLAB's mind? So can we start to bubble up some ideas? Let's do some group brainstorming, little trust falls, all the good stuff. But if we want, we'll even like pass the baton around. So if someone wanted to start with 1, 2, or 3 of your ideas, like what are some of the top issues or opportunities you'd like that are at top of your mind as a board member? Anyone want to kick us off? Feels like a lot like being a professor again.
I mean, I'll jump in, Brian. I
Go ahead,
would
Robin.
like to, thank you. I would like to see CLAB continue to do something that I think we've done, which is to talk about monitoring for trends and talking about what we're seeing health and safety wise in the community. I've appreciated this board listening to presentations like the one on cannabis hyperemesis syndrome and inviting in a variety of experts when we talk about current issues that may be happening in the community. So I think, and then one of those things that I think we've tried to do is through our conversations and is to try to just improve overall public knowledge and awareness of risks, benefits, et cetera, of this product in our community. So I think one thing we could say about our top issues is to continue to, I don't know how you'd exactly phrase this, but remain apprised of what's happening, aspects around cannabis, and hosting experts and exploring those topics.
All great themes. Thank you, Robin. Following Kate next, what are some bees in your bonnet?
Yeah, no, I echo what Robin said. I think that, like to continue to, I think what you said was kind of improve public knowledge, right, and awareness. I think talking about different trends in the market and what's happening in cannabis in our communities, and hosting those experts to help provide, information for good policy movement. So I think that I would agree with that. I think we've talked previously a lot about, youth prevention and educational programs, and we only have so much that we can do in that space from where we're sitting. So I don't know that I would add anything there, but I do think that it's something that will always be, on our minds as we go through this process. I think, Yeah, I tried to think about this, about, the opportunities, and I keep thinking about, the work plan, and more about like these quasi judicial hearings, and kind of stepping into that role as a board, and what that's going to look like for us. And then also thinking about the advisory and the policy side of the board, and how we can continue to grow, and continue to keep a pulse on those things, and what that would look like. And yeah, I think it's trying to figure out, are there other studies that are going on locally or otherwise that we can focus on? But I don't have anything explicitly. I do think that focusing on something that is research based, something that's policy based, something that's gonna make sure that we're still doing the work that the community requires of this board. Nothing too explicit, unfortunately.
Thank you, Kate. Tom, let me put you on the spot. What are your top 3 for community issues or opportunities on the collab's mind?
Wait, I just lost my, am I mute?
No, you're good. We can hear you.
You're fine.
Okay, this is really hard on the phone.
Hey,
Well-
Tom, there was a new link that was emailed out.
No,
so
I
if you're
know, I
trying-
used that.
Okay,
I
okay.
tried that. That's the link I used, and it said it was expired. But because I'm going back and forth, I mean, I do have the packet open on the laptop, but right now I can't see my mute button or anything. I can't see anything but me. As a matter of fact, I can blur my background, I guess, but oops. All right. Come back to me.
All right, we'll come back to you, Tom. Ethan, do you want to take a crack at this? What are things that we should be focusing on here?
Well, I guess I'll start with a question for staff regarding the hospitality recommendations that went before the previous council. And if there's any process in place to ensure that gets in front of the new council, or if that is just kind of, it's been pushed off the table, and is that left up to us to bring it back up?
Go ahead, Kristen.
I can take that one. We didn't really receive clear guidance from council after that presentation on next steps to bring this back. So I don't have a great answer for you. I think if this is something that the board is interested in pursuing, that would probably be a good thing to include in this feedback so that they kind of have a heads up about that. And then we could look at next steps to submit like another informational memo or kind of what that process would look like. But we did not get clear direction from council when we presented to them last time.
I had a similar question, Ethan. So thank you, Kristen.
Sure.
Yeah,
Stacey,
so
go ahead, Ethan. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No worries. But yeah, I think a lot of, time and effort, sweat and tears went into that. And I'd hate to see it just disappear. So, and I know that there's a lot of potential businesses that are waiting for a decision to be made. And, I think they're relying on us to see that follow through one way or another. So hospitality is one. My other suggestion would be industry feedback, reaching out, and in unison with that, also community feedback, just reaching out. What does the community want to see within the next couple of years? What does the industry want to see within Boulder within the next few years? And then my other big highlight is just updating the BRC to be more in alignment with updated state regulations as well.
Thank you, Ethan. Stacey, I know your camera's off, so if you're there, we'll pass
I'm
the baton to
here.
you.
I just, yeah, I'm just on my mobile like Tom now, but I'm still here. Let's see. So my thoughts, I definitely think it is important to get regular, or maybe even we could come up with a way to have regular updates. I'll say industry in general, but that would include, you know, any aspect, legal, public health, medical, whatever. It does feel helpful because when we are here having these discussions, often, you know, one or more of us don't know about some of those, you know, pieces of news that might at least affect our thinking. So it seems like that could be helpful. It seems like with, you know, council in mind, that would also be useful for them to have note of that in our record as well, you know, what's going on, whether that's federally, at the state level, locally, et cetera. I would support the idea of the hospitality discussion. I think we did a lot of work on that, and it kind of felt like it just like fell off, you know, and so maybe somehow revisiting that would be useful. And the other thought for me that maybe because of the space I work in, and I know, Brian, you've brought this up already in the past, is this question of should this board have crossover in this very quickly growing, I won't even say emerging anymore, industry revolving around psychedelic treatments, you know, mushrooms just being one of that, like psilocybin, but there's a lot of that right now that I am seeing out there, and it feels like as much as there is, it lacks any sort of oversight, regulation, et cetera. Very much the same way, you know, this cannabis industry began, and as it's been there, there's been more and more, but that seems an important space. I don't know if that's under the purview of this board or what, but just that question in general, I guess.
Thank you, Stacy. So yeah, I'll just opine here now that I share Robin's concern and like interest in making sure that we continue to provide oversight and tracking and staying up to date with the emerging science as it manifests through medical, public health, and other kinds of fields, public safety. I think that I share the concern that many other board members have already articulated around making sure that all the work that we put into hospitality, that we get some sort of closure on that from council. So getting more clear direction from council about whether they invite revisions to what we've proposed. They don't want us to consider it at all, or something else. And then just building on top of Stacy's third comment there, that the space of natural medicines is like developing rapidly, and that our board is the closest thing that exists within the city of Boulder to having any kind of overlap with the issues in that space, recognizing that it's under a very different kind of regulatory model than that exists for cannabis, but that nevertheless, that I think that the citizens of Boulder deserve some sort of forum to provide input and expertise on matters related to this natural medicine space. And so I think that whether that is our board's mission is expanded to include that, or another board is included, I think is a matter that city council should give us some direction on. Having heard all those, does anyone want to synthesize, triangulate, improve upon in any kind of ways? Discuss more?
Vice Chair Keegan, one thing we never did circle back to Chair Huntsman.
Oh, yep. Sorry. Thank you, Kristen. You're not getting
I'm
out of
ready.
participation.
I'm ready.
Okay, go ahead.
Although some people have already commented on the things I was going to comment about but I do want to kind of keep one thing on the radar, because we had a really nice presentation about change. I mean, and I know it's up to the state and what the state calls things, but you know, we are the Cannabis Licensing Advisory Board. Everything else at the state level, well, actually, it's confusing, but you know, the MED is marijuana. But you know, in terms of being more inclusive, I think if we can, we should try to revisit that name, changing everything in our city language from marijuana to cannabis, if possible. And so we touched on that at one point in time, but we also yielded to what the state, determined the language would be. I agree with you and Stacy about, as you know, because you and I met with the Naropa folks, and I think it's worth a question towards city council to see what they're thinking about further direction with respect to natural medicine, psychedelics, et cetera. I think we're in a logical spot to help out with that, but it also might be obviously a big new challenge too. And everything's different in terms of regulatory or the whole structure. Everything's different. But I think it's worth a question towards city council on that issue. There's the news from last month that our attorney general joined was like 12 other attorney generals asking for them to reschedule cannabis, and that's going to keep hitting the radar. And I don't know if it's possible to get ahead of the game on that one until something actually does change, but I think it might be worth further discussion and education by all involved. I think I'll leave it at that for now.
So just to clarify, to make sure I captured, Chair Kunzman, regarding state terminology being more inclusive, away from marijuana to cannabis, and then of course natural medicine and what surrounds it. Did I capture those correctly? So there was only 2. Okay, thank you.
Seems like there were 3, but no, maybe not.
All right, let us know if you've come up a third time. Kate, I see your hand.
Yeah, just trying to figure out how to consolidate it into bullet points or how we want to do this. And I didn't know if this idea of questions to council could be part of this memo, or whether it would. I know that right now it's top community issues or opportunities that are on our mind, and then top items on our work plan. The question piece is slightly different than that, and I don't know if that is something that we could request as part of this memo, but wanted to ask the city staff if that's something we could do, or whether we should talk about them as our focus and then request advice within that.
So just follow up on Kate's question, I guess my question to staff too would be, what might we expect back from council, if anything, from this, or what has happened in the past? I struggled. We see lots of things, and perhaps council has responded and has acted on our recommendations in the past. I recognize that, but that within this kind of feedback mechanism, what might we expect? And I would also remind the board members that the deadline for us to get this to council is the 22nd. So unfortunately, our meeting right now is our one shot to kind of pull together these recommendations. We won't really have a chance to workshop these and look at this again at the next meeting. So this is our kind of one chance to kind of get some of these through. Not the one chance. I'm traumatizing a bit. But.
Are you suggesting that we could give you, a specific sentence at this point and then talk it through and decide if the things that I heard, I don't know, I the thing that we discussed about monitoring, emerging research and that sort of thing. I think that's something we're continuing to do, but I could suggest a sentence on that if that's helpful. But how do you want to go about doing this? Because we are going to have to agree, I guess, on what we're putting forward. Yeah.
So I think Kristen Teague was capturing some of these themes. And I think the goal was that maybe she could screen share or no.
It's in a very, very brief, very, very shortened note-taking format. It's not in a fully fleshed out. I can kind of give you an overview of what the recurring themes were. If you would.
Maybe let's do this. If you've got a Word document where you've got this template up, maybe we can start to just like put some language to each of these, recognizing the different themes that we've each identified.
I did have a thought about that. I just wanted to know whether or not we could add a questions category of the memo. And then I do have some potential like language that we could add, but I wanted to understand whether or not we could have a section for questions for council and if they would respond, or whether that's out at the table and that'll change the language that we provide in other portions of this memo.
I am open to having a questions to council section.
I was just going to clarify too, the memo does not need to take the form that we provided to you. It can be in any written format that the board desires. We just put this together to kind of get the conversation started, but whatever written format the board would like to do, we can submit it that way.
Thank you, Kristen. See, so my suggestion would be that if Kristen T could put up like a Word document that starts with this down, there it goes. Thank you. And it sounds like we've already heard from all the board members with different themes that are important to us. So we can start to try to translate that into some language. Again, I would encourage flex those BuzzFeed muscles and see if we can sort of capture the attention and the imagination of council in a way that would get them to engage and respond, but recognizing they have no obligation. Kate.
Yeah, I just put together 3. So the first one kind of based on what Robin had said, and Robin, please, it kind of incorporates what you said and then some of the other things that other members have said as well. But to continue to monitor and inform ourselves on cannabis research, public health information and studies, industry trends, regulatory state and federal updates, and host experts on CLAB to inform policy change. Is what I had for the first one. I'm happy to slow down and say that.
Kristen, like how can we make this easy for you?
So what I need you to do is if you have the ability to email me after you guys discuss, email me the final language. Or I mean, I can start typing in here for certain, but I want to make sure I'm capturing exactly verbatim what you as a board.
Kate, what did you say? Can you go back just a little bit? Can you read it one more time, a little more slowly?
Yeah, for sure. Hold on, let me. To continue to monitor and inform ourselves on cannabis research, public health emerging research, industry trends, regulatory state and federal updates, and host experts to CLAB to help inform policy change in Boulder.
I'm good with that. Thank you.
Yeah, my suggestion would be Kate has a set of them here, it sounds like. So maybe we'll go through Kate's one by one. And so after Kate reads each one of these, we can like workshop it. And then Kate
I can email it to,
Yeah,
I can email
if
it
you
right
would-
after.
Yeah,
So
if you would do that, that would be it just with so much conversation going back and forth, I'm afraid I'm going to lose the intent of the
Yeah, I mean, is it
Original.
okay if I say them first? Because I don't want to, I mean, unless you guys want me to just send them to her, but I had.
No. So my suggestion would be like, Kate, let's just like you did, like read one, let's discuss it. And if we like what you're saying, you're okay to email it to Kristen to include. And then we'll move on to the next one.
Oh, do one at a time?
Yeah. So for that first one, again, recognizing we don't have the language in front of us, but the sort of the general intent being that like our board's going to continue to monitor the science and talk to experts and track the emerging trends in the industry. Does that capture the sense of like your first one there reasonably? Is anyone opposed to that?
I mean, I think you do have to have public health somewhere in that sentence. I think Kate had that.
Agreed. Yeah. So
I
no
will-
objections to Kate's first bullet point there. Kate, why don't you take us to your second thematic bullet point?
Second one, to present the hospitality recommendation to the new city council and request direction on how to proceed.
Any feedback on that?
I'm good with that.
I am also good with that. Any objections? Okay, Kate, you're good on the second one. Go for 3.
This one's going to be less less successful. Some of the club members have interest in educating ourselves on psychedelic medicine and curious if the city council has interest in us pursuing it or beyond, right?
Yeah, I would workshop that into something like, should the scope of CLAB's advisory capacity be expanded to include other natural medicines?
I appreciate the rephrasing to a question because personally, that is so far out of the scope for me personally. But I recognize that it says opportunities on CLAB's mind. So I think it's fine to ask the question. I do want to come back to something that Ethan brought up though around aligning the state code to Boulder. And you had something else, Ethan, I'm sorry, that was outside of these as top 3. So.
All right, so Robin, great points. I want to get to those. I just want to close out Kate's third here. So like this third one was just on like whether or not CLAB should expand to natural medicines. Is there any objection to like posing that as a question to council?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to get to see these, right? Because I want to make sure that this is not some sort of statement.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Once I get the email from Kate with her and the board's fabulous wordsmithing, I'll pop them in so everybody can take a view and then we can continue to wordsmith from there. That way I'm not retyping like 15 different times.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Kate, let us know when you're ready for more discussion, because you're doing the heavy lifting right now. While we wait on Kate, Robin, Ethan, do you want to just go back and forth? Like, Robin, you said that Ethan said something really smart, so I want to make sure like Ethan remembers the smart thing he said.
Well, I don't know if I characterized it, but Ethan, you did bring something up about aligning the code.
Yeah, I don't know if I expanded on it that much, but that is, I think, going if we do move forward down that road, that will help to alleviate a lot of confusion that arises out of conflicting regulations that we see between the state and the city level. These policy suggestion forms that we discussed are perfect examples of that.
I mean, maybe this is just a suggestion, Ethan, but maybe we put down as one of our opportunities is that we are going to work harder to be more responsive to policy suggestion forms, and those include times when people are trying to get the code to align. I mean, because I think there are some reasons why Boulder's code is different from the state code, but we should be more responsive when that conflict is causing a problem that for no good reason. So I do think we had this really great discussion today about a new process for for community concerns. And maybe we could discuss what you're talking about a little more broadly as a goal.
I support, this aligning local and state codes as an ongoing work plan element. Oh, we got new stuff coming in. Okay.
It's coming. I would also like to remember that one of the things that we do still have are the 3 are some top items on the CLAB work plan. I don't know if that would be considered with some of your items as well.
Yeah, if you've got those handy, I know that's in the packet here. On page 10 of the packet, discussion topic, social equity, transition to quasi-judicial role, educational programs, updates the latest research. legislative rulemaking updates from state, feedback from industry. So these are excellent ones. We should find ways to incorporate into our document here as well, I would argue.
Okay, so we have these three, but there was a fourth provided in that, and that's the desire to align the BRC closer to state regulations. Do you see that falling under the community issues or opportunities in CLAB's mind, or as part of your work plan?
I
Proposed
would make
work
the
plan?
case for a work plan, but open to other ideas.
I agree.
Yeah, I think it's more of a work plan thing, especially because we want to clarify that we're doing that as a way to be responsive to licensees' concerns.
So I would just separate those out, Robin. So I think they're both really important. So I would just say that ensuring consistency between state and local rules. We can start with that, yeah. And then I think Robin's second point is important to capture here. Just say it again for us, Robin. It's an important distinction.
Okay, well, again, I just want to clarify that I don't necessarily think that CLAB wants to take on just a full force alignment, because there are reasons that Boulder's codes are different.
No, I agree, yes.
Okay, so desire to align the BRC closer to state regulations, as, you know, consider requests by licensees for, oh, go ahead. Sorry. I'm so mealy mouthed. I'm so tired. I'm sorry.
And I think Robin's second point here, I think deserves to be a second bullet point here, to be being more responsive to policy suggestion forms.
So what do we think about the reworded number one on the work plan? Or are we wanting to move on to continue to fill this space up and then discuss it in whole?
Yeah, so let's focus on your top items, work plan number one that you just wrote there.
Okay.
Any objections or wordsmithing here?
Maybe it's just opportunistically align the BRC closer to state regulations based on requests from policy suggestion forms submitted by the public and industry.
All right, I'm good, but I'm not that good. You're gonna have to slow
Desire
that down for me.
to opportunistically align.
Or maybe responsively align, sorry.
Responsive, yeah. You just have an extra line tacked in there.
Thank you. I was gonna redo this, so responsibly,
Responsively, yeah.
responsive.
Be both. I would, building on Robin's suggestion, I think that implementing the process that the attorney's office just introduced for us to be more, this just end up being redundant, to be more responsive to policy suggestion forms. So I'd say that top item would also be for the CLAB to be more responsive to policy suggestion forms. Unless folks think that's already captured in number one. There's definitely lots of it in number one already. Yeah.
What about that? Through, maybe.
Okay.
Does that capture what your intent was, Member Noble?
Yeah, I think so.
Someone had brought up this transition to the quasi-judicial role. I recognize this is also a discussion topic, so I think I would move for this to be part of our work plan as well, sort of like completing our transition to our quasi-judicial role. Kate, you have a hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I'm not just to change one that we already have, but I know last time we spoke about developing an actual like annual work plan for CLAB, and this idea of how often we want to bring things forward to the council, and and that kind of incorporated this idea for the process of suggestion forms and updating council on our progress and quarterly, giving them, whatever it was. I just know that we had mentioned that last time that there was a desire for some kind of like work plan from CLAB, and like putting together a process of kind of doing that and updating them. And so I didn't know if maybe that could kind of incorporate this idea to, like look at the suggestion forms, more closely, to also evaluate the BRC compared to state regulations, and like all of that, to say that our goal is to create kind of a more streamlined process for providing updates and direction to city council, not direction, but providing like
Advice, yeah.
I'm trying to piece it all together too. I'm struggling with kind of where this one's at too, because I also don't necessarily like number one, to be honest, but I don't know, because I think that I guess I have a question, Ethan, about like when you say align, like what does that mean? Because I think that the marijuana advisory panel kind of did a very deep dive into analyzing kind of how to better align. And so I think align is actually the wrong word, which is one I use, not you. But is there a better way to state what you're, like there's been an evolution, right, of the regulations in Colorado based on businesses and industry stakeholder groups, right, or stakeholder groups to change different things. And so maybe evaluating those things to kind of, I don't actually think that there is, at least in my mind, an alignment issue, but more of a understanding of what we truly are allowing and not allowing in Boulder, and if that is what the community wants. Does that make? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, let me try to just read that back. That like there might be differences between the state and local code. We want to make sure that those differences are intentional or have some sort of intent behind them, and it's not the fact that things moved at the state and they didn't move at the city, right?
Yeah, just from my perspective, just trying to make sure that I don't know that the desire is to align. I think it is to evaluate from a Boulder perspective yeah.
I like this idea, like change align to evaluate, responsibly evaluate the BRC.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, Kate, and I appreciate you voicing that to closely capture, I think, the direction that we're wanting to go in. Because yeah, I think the MED, they're frequently meeting with stakeholders, even at a monthly cadence at this point, and we see changes occur on an annual basis. So I guess that kind of brings up the question, like how frequently is Boulder reviewing those updates and choosing to act upon them?
I think for Kristen, I would just maybe add, like, change that closer to desire to responsibly evaluate the Boulder Revised Code relative to state regulations. Yeah.
And then maybe that first word through that's after regulations changes to based on requests. And Kristen, thank you so much. This is
No, not a problem. I don't want to like muddy it so much with so much going back and forth. I'm used to be taking notes, so I don't want to just start typing and completely muddy it up. So I'm being very intentional in what I wait to put stuff in. So I appreciate the process.
Tom, I know you brought up this, and this is also captured in the matters for future collab meetings of things that we've discussed and presented before around the marijuana cannabis terminology. Is there other board members have an interest in like putting that on our memo here?
What was that question again?
You just indicated like a desire to continue to excise. I'm editorializing, but to excise marijuana from the Boulder Revised Code and replace it with cannabis.
Yeah. Revisions, I guess.
Yeah. So we've discussed this in the past. Is this something that other board members wanted to continue to pursue, explore? Stacy, go ahead, or just agreeing.
I would kind of put that way down low on my triage list personally. I get the importance overall of it, but I just feel like we have so many other things that we can talk about that feel, at least personally to me, like more important focuses of our attention. But I could see the point of having that on our list. Just for me, it would be low.
Sure.
I second Stacy, but would suggest maybe it could be captured through a broader scope or a lens of from a social equity standpoint.
Sure. So this was like also a discussion topic. So I think that my suggestion synthesizing these might be that for a top item on Collab's work plan is to continue to engage with to continue to engage in discussions around social equity and justice in policymaking and licensing of cannabis industry.
Social equity, keep going, I'm sorry.
Social equity and social justice on policy and licensing in the cannabis industry. All right, so we got these 6 up here now. Kate, Stacy, do you still have your hand up, or should I drop your hand?
You could drop it. Sorry, I don't know how to do that. I'm looking.
No worries.
Oh,
We
no, I
got you.
messed it.
All right, Kate, go ahead.
I was just gonna, just similar to kind of on number 1, just adding, something at the end of the first one to say, and bring suggestions to city council. I think that just informing them that part of our work plan is to come to them with suggestions, so that they are expecting that. I think that it would just be a good addition.
Look at the AI.
Something to that effect?
Kate, are you happy with that? Any objections from others?
Define scheduled.
Well, that's what would need to be come up in your work plan.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm down with that.
Would be my thought.
Other board members, are there things that you would want to communicate to city council that's not currently captured in our draft right now?
Sorry, Kate, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kate.
I was just going to say with number 3 on the top part, I would say, if so, provide some direction, because that could be a can of worms.
Oops.
Thanks, Kate. Robin, you were going to say something as well.
This is just a wordsmithing thing on the first point. I think I would.
First point, which one?
Sorry, at the top, Kristen.
Okay.
So to continue to monitor and inform ourselves on cannabis research emerging public health trends, maybe.
So do you want it trends/research/study/information? Because we do have industry trends right here.
Why don't we just say emerging public health information? I don't think you need all of that. Yeah.
It was so that people could select which word they want.
And I can take information out here.
Yeah.
Stacy, we'll get to you in a second. Robin, anything else?
No, thank you.
You can,
Stacey, go ahead.
And Robin, you said remove the research and studies too, right? Just say emerging public health
Public health
information.
information, I think is fine. Yeah.
Just take all of this out.
Yeah. All right, go ahead, Stacy.
And this is kind of just touching back on something Robin had said earlier with this idea is the local concept, because I see the federal and state listed there, and it's not so much regulatory as much as trends in that sense, because I think, you know, obviously as a city board, that's of utmost importance that we're made aware, or, you know, we are kept aware and stay aware of trends in our own community, because they may be different than ones we're seeing at state and federal levels.
Do you have a concrete suggestion what we can change in the language here?
Well, looking at it, let's see, regulatory state. I mean, you could just throw the word local in there. Regulatory, maybe federal, comma, state and local. And even though it's not just regulatory in the sense I'm thinking, so maybe industry, or strike that word and change it to something else from regulatory, because I mean, the update should probably be more than that, but we're already including public health in the other wording.
Yeah, you can strike regulatory, Kristen, I think.
Yeah, that looks good to me, because that just keeps it more broad and encompasses whatever it is we feel is important to discuss at those different levels.
All right, we don't have to stay within 3 for each. If there's a fourth you want to add, we'd be open to adding a fourth here.
Can I make one more small tweak on the, or suggest one more small tweak on the first one that I think will make it stronger? Sorry, this is a little bit nitpicky, but where it says to continue to monitor and inform ourselves, could we just say to continue to monitor cannabis research, emerging health, just
Let's strike and inform ourselves.
and inform ourselves on? Yeah. Sorry, thank you.
All right, much tighter and clear. Thank you, Robin. Anyone want to go for 4 on any of these? Or expand, augment, reimagine?
I like it.
Look at us, wordsmithing a document all in 40 minutes. Proud of us.
Okay,
I could not see it until I got on the computer here now, so I hear what Stacy said, and I'm not trying to make choose my words, mountain out of a molehill, but I mean, we've been righting wrongs in society in the past few years, such as changing Mount Evans to Blue Sky. And I guess I would just add in that Clab's work plan in number 3, maybe just add language on social equity, social justice in policy, language, and licensing.
Sure.
Or maybe even, you know, in parentheses, something about removing marijuana or something. Removing the word marijuana.
I think like language could encompass that, but not commit us to it. I mean, we did receive a attorney's memo on this in the past that I may be misremembering, but some of this definitions of what marijuana is are in the state code that we can't really touch, but like that's.
I think it's a good addition. Thanks, Tom.
But I like this as like
we should be leading the state, not following the state. Come
sure.
on. This is Boulder.
This is Boulder. It's the center of the universe, y'all.
Yeah.
All right. Are there any objections to staff presenting this to council as a memo? This language. I don't see any objections. I don't hear any objections. Thank you everyone for your contributions to this. Kristen, give us a share and a save.
All
Lower my
right,
blood pressure.
one moment here so I don't lose it. Just give me a moment here. Whoops, learn how to type, Kristen. Okay, that has been saved and shared with city attorney's office and licensing manager. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Kristen,
And-
for putting up with our wordsmithing.
No, not a problem. It helps when you guys have an idea, then I can just start building on. So I do appreciate that. Thank you so much, board, and especially member Thompson.
All right, so city regulatory licensing office, do you want to close out agenda 8, agenda topics for future lab meetings and updates
Absolutely.
on deadlines?
So going forward for the next month's meeting, we do have a couple of, I have frozen my Word document. So we have the 2 policy suggestion forms going forward into the April meeting packet. I would make a reminder that packet and policy materials are due Monday, March 18th. Do we have anything else other than what's been discussed?
Folks have any other agenda items they want to add to our roadmap here beyond our recent exercise? All right, matters, we okay to close out agenda 8, licensing staff?
Nope, it's just the 2 policy suggestion forms for next month.
Kristen, you just lighten up.
Yeah,
Thank you.
if I may, I just had one thing I wanted to mention that's not on the agenda. I just wanted to let the board know that I am planning a leave of absence that will begin towards the end of this month. Kristen Teague will be acting as the CLAB secretary in my absence. I should have like periodic access to emails, but please make sure that you're continuing to reach out to Kristen if you need anything. Excuse me, or Roberto as well, but just wanted to give the board a heads up about that.
Great, thank you for the update, Kristen.
Sure.
All right, agenda item 9, matters from the board and members of chair and members of the board. Ethan, you had flagged something. Do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I had to make the tough decision to resign from this board. Some unforeseen circumstances have arisen at home, and these personal matters require a lot more bandwidth than they did in the past, and have kind of forced my hand. Subsequently, I'll likely be moving outside of Boulder. This was a tough decision. I could have served longer, but decided to depart now so that the vacancy would not go longer than needed. So in this way, there will be adequate representation from the industry by exiting at this time. I felt that that was more important than trying to milk a few more months out of it. So I'm really sad to have to depart at this time, but it was an honor serving with all of you, a really valuable experience, and I wish you all the best.
Well, Ethan, on behalf of the board, I just want to express my gratitude for all the work and expertise and like attention to detail you've brought to like everything part of this. And so thank you for your time and service, and like we wish you all the best and appreciate you being proactive about timing this in a way that ensures the integrity of the board as much as possible as well.
Thank
Other
you.
folks want to comment?
Yeah, I mean, I just echo that, right? I think really great to have you on the board. Really great in terms of your demeanor and your addition to the board. I think that it was a good kind of balance of things, and as a stakeholder group, you know, we'll definitely miss you. I hope that, you know, things are okay in your world, and I mean, obviously you have to make decisions that are right for you. So maybe a hard decision, but an easy one too. But yeah, I wish you all the best in the future, and just great seeing seeing you again and working with you in a different capacity. It's really cool. So all the best.
Thanks, Kate. I'm sure it won't be the last.
You know, Ethan, I've really appreciated your thoughtfulness on the board and ability to engage on things that, on all aspects of all issues. I've appreciated you being here. I'm sorry you have to go, but thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Waiting for Stacy to see if she wants. Stacy?
go for it, Tom.
Okay, well, I would echo what everyone else said, and we'll miss you. And I wish you great luck on everything that you just described. And if you are going to be in Boulder, we still never had that coffee, Ethan. So I'm hoping we could still do that someday.
Yeah, most definitely. We can circle back to that.
Yeah, but thanks so much for your service, and your insight is always invaluable, and we'll miss you. And we hope that somebody else will be able to fill the shoes. Find out about that soon.
And I'll chime in. Thank you for all your work, Ethan. You've been great, and I totally get the complexities of family and how that might need to draw you away. So best of luck getting through everything you have to. And thank you for all your work here.
Appreciate you all. It's been an honor.
I just one last matter. So I had communicated this already to staff, but I wanted to sort of like bring this before the board and then just to have them give a more formal direction to staff. But my proposal is that I would like staff to be able to present at some sort of regular frequency, like updates on sales data. Staff has already started to identify some data that's already public around sales tax revenue. But whether my thinking was that this could be modeled in a way that's similar to what Officer Gignac does with sort of the updates on her side of just like enforcement actions. I would just be interested in getting updates from city staff about the number of sales or sales tax revenue or number of licensees, if those numbers are changing month to month or quarter to quarter. I open it up back to the board, like what would seem like this is appropriate ask. Is there kinds of data you'd be interested in tracking over time? My interest in this is that the industry was operating under one slope of like sales going up for a long time, and that slope has started reversing since about 2022 and is causing a lot of pain. And I think that has really kinds of profound downstream consequences for the city in terms of budgeting and sort of the ways like this tax revenue data is like used to support other kinds of programs. So I think it's something worth tracking over time. For board members, is there any other kinds of directions or questions you might have or want to like ask staff to consider in providing some kinds of regular monthly or quarterly updates on sales or other kinds of data?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great idea. I think that I would just need some more time to think about potentially what that would be. But I think, yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see what information would be provided.
Staff, is there any clarifications that we can provide about this request for direction?
So I'm happy to chime in and kind of give the board an overview of what information we have available to us. So the city already prepares a monthly revenue report that shows trends in marijuana sales tax revenues. So that's something that we could provide on a monthly basis in your packet. We also have a licensing database that allows us to run reports on licenses that are issued. So we could also provide like an update on the number of licenses, or like an abbreviated license list, something along those lines. So those are two data points that we could easily provide to the board if that's something that you were interested in.
I would be interested in both. So I think that would be a great place to start. I don't know if this needs to be a formal motion, but like if there's any objections to staff providing updates on both sales and license numbers, are there any objections to staff providing those updates on some monthly or quarterly basis?
Brian, I don't have any objection to getting the reporting. I'd be interested to see the information too, but I would just really remind the board that there are many aspects of what's happening on the ground for different people in our community that are not easy to monitor. And we don't have context sometimes for what's happening. I mean, there's a theory out there among some of the folks that I talk to that legislation passed in 2021 that really tightened up the medical card for 18 to 21-year-olds and tightened up purchasing limits for those folks has had an impact on industry sales. But there's no way to monitor that. There's no way to see that. We talked to the cannabis hyperemesis folks who came in and gave us a presentation, but we know that there's no hospital code, for instance, at the hospitals that track what's happening in the emergency room. So I hope I'm not going off on too much of a tangent. I'm fine with getting reporting on sales numbers, but I would just really urge the board that we keep having people come in and talk to us to provide context that is not formally or well tracked in the community.
Yeah, understood and completely agree with those sentiments and that importance. Stacy, I see your hand.
I'm just curious, Robin, do you have any ideas on ways that, we could do some of that? Or are you just more suggesting like we want to keep this on the radar, even though we don't have those formal measures like we do in sales?
Yeah, it's a really tough one, Stacy. I think for instance, cannabis hyperemesis in hospitals, again, that code has not come through yet, although the medical group at the state is working on it. That would be one mechanism, but it's developing. On some of these other things, they're really, really hard to track. And so again, having experts come in, I think, is the best way for us to make sure that we have our fingers on that pulse. If that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. Staff, on this matter, is there any other direction or clarification you need, or are there any objections to staff pursuing these regular updates? All right.
Just to confirm, the capture that I have is the monthly revenue report once it becomes available, and then an abbreviated list of licenses by type. Is that correct?
I don't think it needs to be a list. It probably should be like a number of licenses by type or something like
Just
that.
the number?
Yeah.
Stacy has her hand up, but did you clarify that that's an old hand?
I think that's an old hand.
Okay.
Sorry, like you couldn't figure out something on the mobile. On the mobile, I can't. It doesn't say my hand is raised still. So sorry that I don't know.
Yeah. You had a hand and then you didn't. Good. Okay. All right. That's all I had for my matters. Do other board members have matters?
I just have one other thing, Brian. We had this nice presentation today on the neighborhood needs and desires petition process, and I thought we might come back to that. I would really love to see that, because I do think that's an input from the community that could be potentially valuable to the process. I didn't suggest that we add it to the work plan, but I just wondered if we could take the temperature on the board to see if that's something we could put in process in a similar way to the policy suggestion forms.
What's the concrete ask, Robin?
The concrete ask would be, maybe a motion would be something along the lines of moving to advise the city council to add a neighborhood needs and desires petition requirement similar to the requirements of the Beverage Licensing Authority for new retail marijuana and marijuana grow license applications.
I'm just trying to think how best to handle this. Should Robin submit that as like a policy suggestion form? It seems like a really substantive kind of thing that I want to make sure that gets a full hearing, or should we capture like her well thought out position here in some other kind of way? Okay.
I mean, if the city wants to answer first, I wait.
We could work within a policy suggestion framework.
Robin, would you be comfortable with submitting that through a policy suggestion framework?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
And my question was follow up to that, like that. Is it not correct that we were planning on doing that through the hearing? That the needs and desires is not part of the requirement moving into the quasi judicial hearings? I thought that was part of what we were requiring. Is that not? Wasn't that it wasn't in the rules of?
I think we made the suggestion that if hospitality went forward, that would be included. So this would be a change for just regular apps.
Understood.
Kristen, I see you lit up.
Yeah, Robin answered the question. It was a recommended change as part of hospitality, but if you wanted to require it for all license types, it would require a code change.
Any other clarifications, matters? All right, I will entertain a motion from Ethan for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Robin, for the second. Meeting is adjourned at 6 o'clock exactly. Thank you, board members. Thank you, Ethan, for your service. Thank you, staff, for all your support. We'll see you all in April.
Thank you, everyone. Especially thank you, Brian.
Thanks,
you all.
everyone. Thanks,
Thank
Brian.
you.
Good job, Brian.
Thanks,
All right.
Brian. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Steph.